something about Michio Kaku's expression didn't sit right. This wasn't the confident, ever-curious theoretical physicist the world had grown accustomed to, the man who usually dazzled television audiences with elegant metaphors and playful smiles while entangling the hardest questions in physics. No, this time was different. His shoulders seemed heavier, his voice cracked when he spoke, and his gaze lingered too long on the massive projection behind him. For someone whose career had been built on demystifying the cosmos, Kaku seemed uncharacteristically shaken. And when his trembling words finally reached the packed auditorium, an audience filled with elite scientists, seasoned journalists, and space historians, the room fell into a silence that felt as though the very air had been pulled away. The event had been advertised as a technical briefing, a straightforward update on lunar observation data collected from a new generation of orbital satellites. Most expected statistics, surface maps, perhaps a few refinements to theories about lunar geology. But what unfolded was something no one had prepared for. It was less a lecture than a confession, one that seemed to gnaw at the foundations of everything we thought we knew about Earth's closest companion. Kaku began cautiously, layering the details with a professor's precision, but as the images cycled across the screen, the weight of his discoveries became undeniable. Using newly deployed quantum deep imaging satellites, machines capable of piercing the lunar crust with a clarity far beyond anything attempted before, researchers had uncovered something that shattered consensus. Instead of solid rock layers, the subsurface revealed sprawling hollow cavities, chambers extending for hundreds of kilometers. Their arrangement was not chaotic, not the messy randomness of geology, but symmetrical, deliberate, and structured in a way nature rarely produces. These were not lava tubes. These were not coincidental voids. These were blueprints. Thermal scans added another disturbing twist. Within those cavernous spaces, sensors picked up localized heat signatures. Not diffuse warmth from lingering geological activity, but focused sources of energy, pulsing in patterns, maintaining temperatures that were too precise, too consistent to be natural. The implication was staggering. Something beneath the moon's surface was still functioning. Whether it was a reactor, a buried machine, or an ancient monument retaining power across unfathomable spans of time, Kaku didn't say. He didn't need to. The data was undeniable. Then came the patterns, the ones most had dismissed for decades as quirks of measurement. Gravitational anomalies long considered nuisances to navigation were now mapped in high definition. What emerged was a global grid, an invisible skeleton crossing from pole to pole, perfectly aligned with both the internal cavities and reflective metallic regions found beneath the crust. This wasn't coincidence. This was engineering. Independent maps from 3 separate space agencies confirmed the lattice, a framework too precise to ignore. If this grid was functional, if it still exerted influence, the moon wasn't just hanging passively in space. It could be actively regulating Earth itself, stabilizing the planet's tilt, modulating tides, maybe even influencing climate or biological rhythms in ways we had only ever attributed to chance. In other words, the moon wasn't merely a satellite. It was a regulator, perhaps even a guardian. And if it had been placed, the questions of who did it, when, and why suddenly carried a terrifying urgency. Kaku's tone shifted as he wove mythology into science. He displayed ancient records, Sumerian tablets, Mayan codices, Egyptian hieroglyphs, each depicting the moon not as an eternal companion but as an arrival, a newcomer that altered the heavens. Stories of long nights without the moon, of gods descending from the sky, of luminous disks that shaped calendars and guided kings. Until recently, these were brushed off as poetic metaphor or primitive attempts to explain the cosmos. But when layered against the hard data from modern satellites, the old myths began to feel like fragmented memories, warnings encoded across civilizations. Even the miracle of eclipses, so often taught as a cosmic coincidence, took on darker undertones. The Moon is the exact size and distance needed to perfectly obscure the Sun from Earth's perspective, a phenomenon unique in the Solar System. Was that mere chance, or careful design? Was the alignment meant as a celestial spectacle, or as a mechanism, perhaps even a signal? By now, the auditorium was restless. Some scribbled notes furiously, others sat frozen, their faces pale under the projector's glow. The next revelation sent shivers through every spine. Subsurface radar had uncovered reflective materials scattered in geometric patterns, alloys unknown to modern metallurgy. These weren't natural ores. They were engineered materials, composites designed for durability, heat resistance, and shock absorption. Simulations showed them acting like shielding, protective casings around vast cavities. The Moon, it seemed, wasn't just hollow in places. It was armored. Kaku hesitated before continuing, his voice heavier. He recalled the strange seismic echoes recorded during Apollo. NASA had deliberately crashed modules into the lunar surface, expecting quick dampened vibrations. Instead, the Moon rang like a bell, echoing for nearly an hour. At the time, explanations ranged from unusual rock density to instrumentation quirks. But now, with new data, the truth seemed more ominous. Natural bodies don't resonate that way unless they are hollow, or worse, hollow and reinforced. The Apollo moonquakes were not geological groans. They were responses, resonances of a tuned structure. The Moon wasn't just passively receiving impacts. It was reacting like a designed instrument. And then came the signals. For years, radio astronomers had quietly catalogued strange emissions from the lunar far side, low-frequency bursts, or regular pulses. Dismissed as interference, solar activity, or mere anomalies, they had largely gone ignored. But deeper analysis revealed repeating digital-like structures hidden in the noise. Bursts that mirrored patterns in primitive computer language, almost as though they were messages, or system checks. Stranger still, these emissions spiked whenever human probes passed behind the Moon, as though the hidden mechanism became aware of being observed. The possibility could no longer be brushed aside. The Moon might not just be a relic. It might be active. It might even be watching us. The mathematics of the orbit added yet another layer of mystery. Unlike other moons in the solar system, ours is almost absurdly perfect. Its size and distance allow for flawless eclipses. Its orbit is unnervingly stable, resisting long-term drift that affects countless other satellites. Its rotation is synchronized so exactly that only one face ever looks down on us. This tidal lock is often taught as a natural outcome of gravity, but the probability of it settling into such flawless balance, without even minor irregularities, is astonishingly low. To Kaku, the evidence suggested design, not coincidence. The Moon wasn't merely orbiting. It was performing. Perhaps the most chilling moment wasn't in the data at all, but in what had been lost. Kaku mentioned erased Apollo tapes, mission recordings missing from archives, telemetry overridden, astronaut transmissions abruptly cut during far-side orbits. Whistleblowers, now elderly, had spoken of private briefings, unexplained lights, and instructions to remain silent. The gaps in history were beginning to look less like negligence and more like deliberate erasure. Someone, it seemed, had long suspected the truth, and chosen to keep it hidden. By the time Kaku stepped away from the podium, the silence was unbearable. This wasn't the odd quiet of discovery. It was the hollow pause of realization that the object dominating our night skies, inspiring poets and guiding sailors, may not be what we thought. The Moon might not be natural. It might not be lifeless. And it might not be ours. From its impossible orbit to its hollow echoes, From ancient myths to missing NASA tapes, every thread now pointed in one direction. The moon was placed. The moon was built. And if Michio Kaku, a man rooted in quantum physics and cautious optimism, wept at the implications, then perhaps we should all pay attention. Because if the moon is not what we think, then the real question is not how it got there, but why. And more importantly, what happens when we finally wake it up? So I leave you with this. Do you believe the moon is natural, a cosmic accident, or is it something far stranger, an ancient machine still ticking above our heads? Share your thoughts below. And remember to subscribe to our channel, because the next revelation might just change everything you thought you knew about the sky above us. Sometimes, the greatest mystery isn't out there in the stars. It's been hanging right above us all along.